morning about what we did in this course, and Carol and Pierluigi gave a good summary. And well, one thing Frida said this morning, in everything there's a lot of problem. Pierluigi said it's a little bit different, so we have to well define things, and I think those two things are somewhat similar and very true. What I want to do in my short presentation is give somewhat a perspective of this debate. And I think one of the questions, and Pierluigi was saying how difficult it is to change the well-grounded utility welfare theory between practitioners. And obviously, I think there is a reason. I mean, there is some sense to this approach, but it definitely contradicts equity, or it doesn't, it's by definition almost not equitable doing efficiency welfare utility theory. So one of the questions I was interested, and that's part of what Bertrand did in her PhD, trying to see, can we have a good evaluation measure accounting for both efficiency and equity? And then the other question, which is how related is all the issue of modeling and activity-based, and I will make few points regarding, we use a lot of activity-based, accessibility activity-based. I want to make few clarification about it. Again, so these are the question, and I think what we've been doing so far in cost-benefit analysis, we all know it, I don't need to repeat it, but cost-benefit analysis in general maximize efficiency, and therefore is not really taking care of equity. And the most common practice which we've been using so far is use equity value of time, of travel time, within this cost-benefit analysis. And by this, we somewhat go away a little bit from the pure efficiency and somewhat a little bit more towards equity. But it's not any theoretical right approach or anything. It's somewhat empirical way to improve equity within the traditional cost-benefit analysis. And the real question is what if there is really a way to put them together somehow theoretically correct or not, and that's what I will discuss in this short presentation. Quick issue about activity-based model accessibility measure. Activity-based accessibility measure, which we have been talking a few times in these last 3 days, are not really that I mean, the idea doesn't start from equity consideration, actually. The activity-based accessibility approach are a correct evaluation measure within the traditional cost-benefit analysis. What they do, activity-based accessibility approach, are basically, again, the activity-based modeling, I'm not going to explain our activity-based models, but basically activity-based models are accounting for all the choice dimensions we are doing through our travel behavior. So basically starting from the mode we travel, how much we travel, where we travel to, and basically they reflect the probability of doing this different activity. And basically what the activity-based accessibility measure is basically the log sum of all these decisions. By the way, it's a very nice theoretical idea. Practically, it's a very complicated thing to estimate and calculate. So I don't know of any actual practical real calculation of real log sum in any other travel model in any particular metropolitan area. We do some approximation, we do some shortcut, we do some, but it's a theoretical idea, quite complicated in practice to do. The nice theoretical things about activity-based accessibility measure that it is the log sum, we can show mathematically, it is the expected utility that a person can achieve for the travel choices he has. I'm not going to explain why it is, but this is what it is. So basically, this is a right measure to evaluate a person's benefit from travel choices and for travel opportunities, from utilitarian point of view, not from equity point of view. Okay, so we still within the utilitarian point of view. So this activity-based model, which is here, produces activity-based accessibility measure, which can also be used on one point to evaluate a personal expected utility. On the other hand, a lot can be input to a lot of other long-term choices he does. So it is with a much broader framework. And if we have the expected maximum utility, we can easily convert it to consumer surplus. If we have the utility, the income in our utility, dividing it by the marginal value of utility, we can have a monetary value which is basically the consumer surplus a person can do. And based on this measure, we can calculate changes in consumer surplus theoretically, again, within the utilitarian approach. I mean, this is still with all, classic cost-benefit analysis. It's not different, okay? Okay, we'll go ahead. The real advantage of activities-based model for equity issue and I said it on Tuesday for those on the training school. It's really the ability to have basically, it's a disaggregate model that we can have the measure allow, basically it's a personal level, it's on the disaggregate level. So for each person we have his expected utility, and it can be different for each person for similar choices. So it take both the personal characteristic and the travel choices characteristics. And therefore, the main things that activity-based model is giving us is really the ability to estimate utilities and expected utilities by different population group, by socioeconomic, by auto ownership, by type of tour, by type of trip, okay? So basically, that's the main tools, but then we're coming back to not aggregating them. I mean, so we use activity-based accessibility measure in cost-benefit analysis by aggregating them and get aggregate benefits, but now we have the opportunity to keep them disaggregate and to calculate utilities by each group of population, whatever we define group of population. I mean, part of the equity issue is what are the group that we define? Are they socioeconomic? Are they auto ownership? Are they geography, spatial scale? So, but the activity-based approach can provide us a tool to calculate it. There's still the question, what are we doing with it? I mean, how do we now, and that's where more discussion on the last 3 days, how we define equity, what we want, by what measure, and things. Okay, so what Bertrand did in her PhD, and she talked about it yesterday to those who were here yesterday, she basically was asking, can we take this activity-based accessibility measure and somehow do this cost-benefit analysis, but better account for equity? Now, she came with a couple of theoretical ideas that have been around. I mean, and there's the capability approach we've been discussing. I mean, the capability approach is a very nice idea, but putting into practice in transportation cost-benefit analysis, evaluation is quite complex. And I don't think we solve how to do it. I don't think we have a way to do it. And I'll just show you the example of what Bertrand did, but she left this question, how we really define capability open. The other thing was the subjective value of accessibility again, which is also kind of, again, some approximation, some conversion. From my point of view, what is really done here is somewhat a different approach to this equity value of time. We just do some conversion of the benefit to give more advantage to those who are less advantaged or to the poor or whatever. So just in a very short, I mean, I'm not going to present it. There's a paper about it, and it was presented yesterday. But basically, we looked at two different approaches. So one, we take this, again, the activity-based accessibility measure that we get from the activity-based model. And one thing was to change the classic consumer surplus into change in consumer well-being. So basically, that was one approach, to take the traditional approach, but putting something here by this conversion, some conversion of subjective well-being based on income. We know that there's a marginal, diminishing marginal utility of income, and therefore people with higher income will have less gain of this subjective of well-being, and therefore will have less benefits accounted for the better off. So that was one idea. And the other idea was to take the capability approach. And what we did in the capability approach, I mean, as I said, I mean, the question how we define in terms of travel options, what is within capable or not. So we took a very simplistic approach, and I admit it's a simplistic approach, saying, well, destination up to half an hour travel or whatever some time limits are within our capability and the other are not. And then we calculate the benefit. We do the same kind of framework, and we basically take this conversion factor based on the capability sets that we define, and we calculate benefit only for those capable. So basically, we kind of ask, we need some minimum threshold. So people with current less capable are gaining more capable. If you already have this in your capability set, you are not really gaining. It's whether those are risk capability. And then we call this measure value of capability gain. And again, eventually we calculate some cost-benefit analysis, but based on this capability limit. And Bertrand did a nice case study with data from the San Francisco Bay Area. That was what she presented yesterday. I'm not repeating it. For those who are not there, I'll just tell one sentence. And she tried these two measures, and she saw that, and she showed that using these two measures, we basically show if we analyze by groups, we basically show that alternative, we analyze different improvement scenarios to the transportation system and compare these two measures with a traditional cost benefit, and we show that under these two measures, alternatives that are more geared to less advantaged people will do better relative to the other alternative in these two measures comparing to the traditional cost benefit analysis. So it works. Okay, so in terms of empirical analysis, it works. And that's what we say. In general, we show that these two alternatives show better trade-off. But the main question remain, I'd say, and as I said, I'll go directly. The main question remain how to really define these capabilities, how to really convert changes in consumer surplus to changes in consumer well-being. Well, we did something. It worked empirically. But first, we did it on one case study. We cannot say it's worked globally. It's the absolute truth. We don't have the ambitions to say it. We did something. We trusted it empirically. It worked nicely. So we say, okay, this can be an alternative. But now I'm talking about future research. And I'm asking, if this is the theoretical approach, can we develop a theoretical approach to do something like this? I don't know. I really don't know the answer. I have doubt. I doubt that we can actually have a good theoretical approach that combines the two things. And maybe the solution is what Florida saw, and so the working group came with us today, really look at diversity and groups and population, and then I'm coming to the other traditional in practice, the way so far in practice we're mostly doing the equity, I think the most practical way is just putting in some multi-criteria analysis. And it's still, we take the cost benefit, we take some equity measures, and we do some multi-criteria analysis to combine them. But all this approach, again, are somewhat combining different things in some empirical mix that we have no really base. I mean, we can do a different empirical mix and get other results. If we don't like the result, do something different. We'll get other results, right? So that's exactly the point. So I think in terms of the research, I mean, either we look for a better theoretical approach, and well, the capability is a theoretical approach, but we don't have a theoretical way to implement it, I think. Or if we agree that there is no real theoretical approach, we need much more empirical work to show what's work and what's good and how to do it. So that was my short presentation summary. Thanks.